All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in to another live stream brought to you by Civility Wins. I am Sandy B, and I'm here with the lovely Kristen Goss, and we are Civility Wins. And today we're going to be chatting with you about things that trigger us and the relationships that sustain us. As you know, with Civility Wins, if you've watched something from us before, we like to talk about different life issues and professional development, and the things that allow us to kind of make it through the day. We always look for different topics that really touch on the core, which is that civility wins at all times. But we just want you to be sure that you are connected with who you are, what you're all about, and maintaining professionalism at all costs. So today we're going to talk about three major categories of issues. We're going to talk about relationships, and specifically we're going to talk about triggers and some of the relationships that sustain us when we're dealing with different triggers in our lives. We're also going to talk about the friendships that we turn to, when we're going through different things in our lives. And last but not least, with everything that's going on in the world, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the triggers and relationships and the issues that come along with living in America, being Black in America, all of the issues that have come up with, some of the violent attacks that have happened. These are things that really affect us in everyday life, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, Kristen, what are your thoughts so far about these triggers and these relationships that we're going to talk about today?
Well, when you first talk about or say relationships, the first thought that comes to my mind is from childhood. And one of the questions I had, and you and I had spoke about this earlier, who's more emotional, men or women, right? And me personally, I believe that men can show emotion and women can show emotion differently. And I'll take myself, for example. I believe that I'm affectionate, I'm nurturing. I like to talk about my feelings. I like to communicate, openly. And part of that, I believe, is nurture. My mom was very affectionate. And then I think part of it is nature. That's just who I am as a person. And as I got older and majored in communication studies and the art of how to communicate across cultures and gender, in dealing with conflict resolution styles and different things like that, learning how I like to communicate, again, came to surface for me that I am affectionate, nurturing, and that sort of thing. Then when I look at my dad, for example, he was a man of few words, very stern. You would respect him. But how he showed emotion is he kept his vulnerable emotions to himself. Wow. And, other emotions, for example, if he was disappointed, he would say, one or two words about it, and that would be the extent of it. And so I think about that, and I've come to the realization that for me personally, I believe men and women in general they're both emotional beings, because that's who we are as human beings, period. But we can show emotion differently. So when you talk about relationships, and for me, one of the first introductions to relationships, of course, is parent-child. Right. I think about things like that. Also, father-daughter type of relationships. I have 3 girls of my own now, and I observe their interactions with their dad. My oldest, for example, is more like me in a sense where she likes hugs and she'll ask her dad for hugs. And he may not be as affectionate, or is not like a touchy-feely type of person. Right. But I encourage that because we all show emotions differently. And if that is a way she expresses herself, it's a positive thing. It's a healthy thing, I think, that she is going to her father for some type of reassurance in that sense. So I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think that that's what makes the world go round, that people have different ways of, showing their emotions and who they are as individuals. What do you
That
think about this, Sandy?
Look, this topic is really close to me. When we started talking about some different ideas for shows, this is something that I think about on an ongoing basis. Just want to shout out to Miss Beverly for tuning in to us
Hey,
this
Beverly.
morning on LinkedIn. We appreciate you. When I thought about this, I started to think about, day to day, what are the things that really get me riled up, that kind of take me out of my lovely peaceful mindset. Like I have my little diffuser right now in the background, giving me some lavender scents, giving me relaxation. And then somebody comes along and wants to mess up the fuse here that's happening, right? So I think what I thought about this topic is that there are so many things that cause us to just like snap. Like we snap for all kinds of things during our days. And a lot of times we have to recognize why these things are triggering us. What is it about these issues, these things that pop up that really just cause us to go off and be completely out of character of who we want to be? And then the other thing is, I kept thinking to myself, there are people that I turn to specifically for different reasons, right? So when I call you up, you already know we talking about some stuff, but we also talking about business and we're talking about family, and so we have a well-rounded approach to our conversations, right? We have a lot of different things that we connect on, and we couldn't be farther apart in types of people. Like we're very different types of people. We have very different lifestyles. You're married, I'm not married, you have children, I don't have kids, but we connect because we understand some core things about being able to talk to somebody openly without judgment, being able to talk to somebody openly and that person's listening to what you're saying and not trying to, I guess, fix something for you, right? Just having someone that you can vent to without that person feeling like you're complaining. Because I get that sometimes with certain people. It's like when you call them up and say, man, here's what happened to me today. It's like, oh, why are you worried about it? Just get over it. You're the wrong person. Let me call Kristen right now because she's the person I need to be really talking to. So those are the types of things that crossed my mind with this conversation, and even with talking about the emotional piece. I would say like the men in my life, no matter the men, there's a lot of levels of emotional that play into being a man, and many times we always hear as women, oh, women are emotional, women are emotional. Yeah, but men are as well. And the way that they express that emotion is just not really the same, but it can be. And the reason that it often is not is because, growing up, men are not given the opportunity to express the emotion because it's seen in a way. Some will say it seems soft, or, you shouldn't be soft. You need to be a man. You need to be strong. You need to have like, a thing. But for you to really have some productive relationships, there has to be a level of softness in some way. There has to be a level of vulnerability. And we all struggle with that in many different ways. I know I do. I know we all have levels of that. And then the other thing I was thinking about with this is understanding how men and women interact in supporting the emotional side, right? If a man in your life is having an emotional moment and you're like, oh, be a man, that's not going to help them be open and supportive of you when you're having your rough moments, right? And in the same token, if you're a woman and you're going through something, oh, you're too emotional, that's not a support, so it's like thinking about triggers and thinking about the relationships that sustain us. We have to be conscious of how we kind of push off on behaviors, push off on emotions, and allow people to express themselves in the place that they are and not be dismissive. And that's a place that I feel like many, especially in our community, especially in the Black community, we're dismissive of each other. And so we then become black man versus black woman instead of black men and women.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel
Yeah.
like I see a lot of that in our spaces, especially on social media. There's this black man versus black woman. And I'm like, that's not helping us push forward. That's not building loving relationships. That's not doing any of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that I think about that kind of give me a pause sometimes, so I could really reflect and say, okay, am I being dismissive of others' relationships? Am I being dismissive of others' emotions? And also, am I allowing people to be dismissive of my feelings and emotions
Mm-hmm.
and thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
And think
Mm-hmm.
about who I'm turning to for different things, because you have to make choices. You can't
Yeah.
talk to everybody about certain things. Sometimes you have to keep certain things in certain pockets because it's not meant for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's not meant for everybody.
Yeah. You
So,
make a good point there, Sandy. I think about me, and the older I get, um, identifying who you could go to for that.
right,
Time out for me to feel some sort of way because someone is being dismissive.
right,
If they're dismissive, okay, moving on to the next, and you learn, which is why I love this background. Friends are the family you choose. I have friends in my life because I've chosen certain people to be in my life.
right,
And I've chosen those people for a reason, to bring positivity, to bring support, to bring upliftment to each other. Um, and when you speak about the dynamics between men and women, I think for myself, uh, my experience, I could only go by this, is that men, for some men, they like to fix things, right? So when you're talking to them and you're venting, and for me, I'm sharing this because I just need to get it off my chest,
right.
so I can move on and move forward about my day. But for some men, it's like, okay, well, what do you want me to do about it? And
I don't
and
want you to
that's
do
the end of
nothing.
it's like, exactly, nothing. Just listen, hear me out. That's it. That's all I want you to do so I can move forward. Like, I need to get this off my chest because it's not going to, I'm not going to be productive, and I'm not going to be able to move forward until I get this off my chest. So just let me get this off my chest, and that's it. Right. So it's funny that you say that as far as the dynamics between men and women. But good point for sure, Sandy. Good points. So go ahead.
So, I mean, I think you and I have had this conversation about the talking to the men in our lives and
Mm-hmm.
trying to do what we as women love to do. For some reason, it massages our spirit to be able. We got to say
Yeah.
what we got to say, get it out of
Mm-hmm.
our system, and then we're clear, right? Like we can. Well, maybe
Mm-hmm.
we don't let it go all the time, but we're clear for a moment at least.
Got to work on
But
that. Yeah.
yeah, I do notice, a lot of guys don't have that sense of, it's kind of like, well, why are you even wasting your energy on it? Just get over it. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't get over it because you won't let me vent and say what I got to say. I'm not complaining. I am venting, right? That's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing. So we got some
Shout
commentary.
out
We
to
got our
Tracy.
people watching today. Thank you guys so much. Shout out to Tracy for coming on. Hey. Um, so, I think about all of these situations, and we I think the other day we were talking, Kristen, about this whole men are from Mars. Men are from Mars. Is it men are from Mars? Women are from Venus.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, it is very much like that. And, I like this point that Tracy just posted. She said they have their things that they can't get over as well. And that's so
Mm.
true, because
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
about the time that a guy has tried to vent to you. And
Yes.
again, think about the time, because it doesn't happen too often, but it happens enough that you start to know what triggers them. But they don't get over it. They'll be telling you not to get over it. And it's like,
Yeah.
but they don't get over it. But they
Yeah.
won't really talk about it, but you'll know their position on things. Like, I have a friend, and this is so funny because he's he's just a character of all proportions. So I had a friend of mine who had her dog neutered years ago. And he's Jamaican, and there was something he was talking about the dog's manhood, and he was like, you can't take away the dog's manhood. To this, to this day, this man still remembers that, because every time I'll mention my friend, she'll be like, does he still remember that? And it's like, yeah, I mentioned you the other day, and he was like, oh, the one that took away the dog's manhood. I'm like, how you still talking about something that's a trigger for you, because you feel like, you shouldn't be doing that to the dog. And it's like, but that's not your dog. Like, why are you worried about it? But normally, this same person would be like, you can't be stressing over those things, but you're holding on to dear life. So Tracy has a really great point. They have their things. And so I think it's important for us as, both men and women to understand that we're not going to be on one page, but we're going to have to find a way for our pages to come together, in a sense, like the way a book does, right? All the pages are different, but it's different. Speaking of book, we have to do some plug-in. We're going to do a commercial.
Of course. Yes.
So, that our book project is dropping. That's why we started to really focus on our YouTube channel, and really starting to post some more information, because we want to start talking about the things that really triggered us to write our book, which is Civility Wins, Find Your Peace While Taming the Beast. It is going to be dropping soon. We're literally doing the last edits. Finally, it's been what is it, been 2 years? I think it's been almost
3 or 4.
Almost 3 years. Or 4? Yeah.
I want to say 2018. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a minute. And I mean, we've gone through a lot of editing and chopping and getting some professional supports and all of that. And I think we're finally at the point where that finished product is almost 2 presses. Like we're at draft, like final proof stage. But Civility Wins, Find Your Peace While Taming the Beast. Our book project will be dropping very, very soon. Like we'll probably do pre-sales, I think, as early as next month, if we can finalize these details, right? We talk about our experiences, and I don't even want to mark it as just our experiences as attorneys, because I think a lot of these situations that we talk about in the book would apply even outside of the legal world, right? Because we're dealing with people. And so we wanted to write a book that showed some of the ways that we dealt with some adverse obstacles and challenges in our practice, because as two Black women attorneys, we went through quite a bit early on in practice from all fronts, right? It wasn't just, our counterparts. It wasn't just women. It wasn't just men. It was on all fronts. It wasn't people that were older or younger. There was just so many different things. And so when we decided to write this, it was after dealing with a trifecta of cases. We had a few cases together that we dealt with, and we were like, we have to write this down. We have to document these experiences and then talk about some of the challenges that we had. So that's why we talk about some of the topics that we cover on this channel, because we want to hit some of the things that impacted us when we decided to write the book. Did I miss anything, Kristen?
No, I think that's beautiful. And I see this book as inspirational to anybody, whether you're a law student, just starting off in law school, or just starting off as an attorney, or a business professional, or an entrepreneur, whatever. I think it's something, like you said, Sandy, that can, stem across different horizons.
Right.
And for me, because yes, we talk about triggers, and, I want to talk about it. I want to get it off my chest, but how can we resolve? How can we get to a resolution? That's what I like to do. And I know that you are similar. We see these issues. Okay, let's talk about it, because oftentimes nobody wants to talk about things. That's an issue. That's a problem. So let's talk about it. Let's put it out on the open. Okay, now how can we get past this? So I think that is, so Tracy, you're funny. So I think that is, important to, identify the problems, and then how can we move past the problems and resolve. And I think that is the main point of our book as well. Civility, as we said, it always wins. But we got to talk about it. We got to talk about these problems.
Right.
So.
So Tracy says, if you're starting off in law school, run. Tracy, don't make me laugh about law school experiences. We're going to have a whole show on some law school fundamentals. Okay, so today we were going to cover a couple of things. So first, we wanted to talk about, when we talk about relationships, many times we hear this whole thing about women being emotional. And we talked a little bit about just now, how men are emotional as well, how we both express ourselves in very different ways when it comes to our emotions. But I wanted to talk a little bit more deep about the father-daughter versus mother-son relationships, right? Because we know in our community, we have a lot of, I would say, differences in family structures, as many families do. It's not just in our community, but I'm going to focus on our community. We have a lot of disparities when it comes to family structures. And so there's not always this combination of father, daughter, mother, son. It just doesn't really always exist. I know for me growing up, it was very choppy, right? I'm still connected to my dad as in my older age. We have a very interesting relationship. It's not, I would say, your average father-daughter relationship, but it is one nonetheless. It's what it is. But I recognized early on that, we have to accept our parents for who they are. And we have to understand that the way they grew up is not the way we grew up. And we have to take that with what it is. Otherwise, we are going to be stressed. We're going to be dealing with a lot of pushback because we don't understand them and they don't understand us. And so when you take that with going into relationships and someone not having a father or mother in their life, or someone not having that father-daughter or a mother-son relationship, and now you bring these two people together, it's no wonder we have certain issues that pop up in families. It's no wonder that people don't know how to treat a woman or how to treat a man or how to treat a relationship, which should be a partnership and a coming together and a sharing, some compromise, hard work, right? You get a lot of these situations that you listen to and it's like they were barely married for a sneeze and they're ready to give up. Then you have these others that have been really in the trenches, but you hear the real story about how they went through the trenches. It's not always easy, right? It's not roses. But I think these things have a huge impact on what triggers us and who we choose to turn to for our sustenance. You always hear stories of, young ladies who go to their dad to ask certain types of questions. They don't go to their mom, they go to their dad. And then you have young men that will go to their, like, that really have a bond, a strong one with their mom. But then when you have that missing piece, guess what that turns into? Now you're looking for someone to fill that void. And it makes it hard because if you're burned, we have a situation where now relationships themselves become triggers.
That is very important. Yeah.
It's a lot. Let's see what Tracy says. There's definitely a level of grace that we have to give older generations because truth is, with access to information comes enlightenment. Yes. Can't blame them for what they simply didn't know. And trust me, I've been really coming to connect with that because we'll be them. Tracy,
speak for yourself, Tracy. Speak for yourself in a few years.
Why are you trying to remind me, Tracy? I'm already I'm knocking on it right now. But yeah, Tracy brings up an important point. Do we have grace for the relationships in our lives? Do we have grace when we are triggered? Because sometimes it's a matter of really kind of stepping outside of ourselves because we can let things trigger us all the time. We can. Every moment of the day. Like right now, I hear Jeremiah up front. And I can go up front and be like, Jeremiah, please, can you give your auntie a moment, please? Tracy says, LOL.
Tracy, you're digging yourself into a deeper
you
grave.
Guys
what I meant was you guys will be them.
Tracy, I'm done with you today.
Log off, Tracy.
So the question then becomes, when we talk about culture and the influence that it plays in these relationships and these triggers, How does it work for you, Kristen? Because we're both of different cultures. You're African. Well, I don't know if you want to call yourself African American. Everybody has names
It's
now.
fine.
You're Black American. I'm technically a hybrid of sorts because I would be Black American, right? I was born here in the United States, but I'm technically really like core Haitian because everything in my lineage at this point that I know of is Haitian. Culture is interesting for us, but how is it for you in terms of the relationships and the triggers?
It's very interesting because, as you stated, I am American as they come. Mom was from North Carolina, dad from Georgia, and we, y'all and yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And, when you walk in a room, it's like, good morning. How are you today? How may I help you? And then I can say this because I'm a native Floridian. Some people don't have manners in South Florida, especially. They don't say hi. They walk right past you or brush right past you without saying, excuse me, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So those are kind of triggers for me because it's like, hello, excuse you, And then I'm married to a traditional Jamaican man.
Lot of mercy.
Was born and raised in Jamaica until he was 18. And so we're extremely different culturally. I love my collard greens, my cornbread, my black eyed peas, you name it. I love it. Back, all that kind of stuff.
Turnip greens. You were excited about my turnip greens this morning I was eating.
Very much so. Yes. And of course, with him, the traditional Jamaican dishes. But I will say this. This is different from how I was raised. My dad could not cook a lick. Loved him, and to this day I'm still a daddy's girl. Yes, Jamaican. Yes, Jamaican girl. Jamaican. But he can cook really well. Oh, wow. Much better than I can, and I hope I'm not embarrassing him too much because, as he says, you know it already, Sandy.
I'm so shy. Don't mess up with the man. I'm so shy,
and even though he has his glitter and flash, yes, it's very different, and even in the way we conduct ourselves, because as I stated before, I love to communicate whatever is on my mind.
Yes,
I say it. And I might not say it, well, I'll put it like this. My mom used to say, learn how to pick and choose your battles. So that is very true. I don't have to say exactly everything at all times. But a trigger for me is some things have to be said. Like, something happens and then the next day everybody go about their day and like nothing happened. Like, I'm like, is it just me?
That is the only way. You want us to actually talk about what's going on?
I'm like, no, you need to sit down and have a conversation. Like, no, because for me, as I said earlier, I like to resolve things too. Like, and in order to do that, you need to discuss the issue or the problem that occurred. And then let's have a conversation about how we can get past it. Otherwise, it's going to continue to pop up. So that's a trigger for me.
Kristen, we don't have no problem. That problem was yesterday.
But, he and I have been married for 14 plus years. And needless to say, we have been through some things. But you mentioned, working together and compromise and all of that. Those are things we had to learn over the years. Give and take. And there's another point that I was going to say, and I totally forgot what it was, but united front, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Be a united front. And as we have kids of our own, and I was actually talking about it with someone earlier today, kids are very smart. And they pick up on everything, even things that we think that they don't. So it's very important that even if we have a disagreement, that disagreement remains between he and I.
Right.
We have a discussion about it. There's no need for children to get involved in that. They need to remain in children and child-related things.
Right.
And they don't need to grow up faster than, who or what they are, whatever age they are.
Right.
And they don't need to be worried about mommy and daddy. They don't need to have any of that extra stress. The stress in and of itself nowadays, with all the things that are going on in our community,
Right.
in our nation, it's crazy. I can't even imagine some of the things now and would have not imagined as we were kids growing up, what they have to deal with, the bullying, the, going to school and wondering if we're going to have them come back to us. And Marlon, can you not talk in the background? But yeah, we need to, home needs to be a safe place for our children. And in order for that to be that way, we as parents need to, make sure again that we're not perfect. There are going to be disagreements, there are going to be conflict, but how you deal with the conflict, how you go about it needs to be dealt with in a healthy, mature way. So that's what I'll say about that. What do you think, Sandy?
My Haitians, I'm going to say a little prayer. I think we have a generational gap. And while I think there's been some adjustments due to technology, right? People are getting used to things. I've been seeing my mom on YouTube. She's on YouTube. She's using her phone. She got a little tablet or laptop. I think when it comes to what you were talking about earlier, which is communicating the issues. No. There's the communication thing is a very rough thing because it's kind of like, this is my business. We don't have to be talking to other people about our business. We don't have to be talking about all this stuff. It's too much conversation. And I'm not going to say that that's a universal concept across the culture. I will say that a lot of families have gaps in communication, being open, sharing information, talking about things as they're happening versus letting things fester and fester until you really just get really fully triggered. So I think that's a lack. And I think culture plays a role because it affects how we learn to deal with others. It affects how we enter relationships and how we engage with other cultural groups, with the society at large. And I think that goes for anybody. Your culture is going to really shift how you interact. And, there's certain behaviors that are acceptable versus not acceptable. So those are kind of a challenge, to get through. I see Marlon is over there clanging.
Yeah, you can hear Marlon clinging and speaking, mumbling.
Of course.
I think you made a good point when you said generational, because I do see a difference even with the way I was raised, right? Like there were certain things that weren't discussed. Right. And you had this saying, remain in a child's place. You would dare not question an adult or an authority. So I do think as we progress and, technology and children today, I will tell you, they're different. they're very different from how we grew up. So I think having sort of a sense of understanding and the transition, Marlon, they're cooking.
You got them pots clanging.
I hope he does. I think that we're beginning, as Tracy mentioned earlier, the enlightenment comes with the access to information. So That's very true.
Gotcha. So we've talked about relationships in terms of, how our differences, whether it be men versus women, whether it be mother, daughter, father, son, whether it be talking about our culture effects. Let's talk a little bit about friendships, because you and I both definitely have appreciation for having different types of people in our lives for different purposes, right? Not everybody is engaged in your day-to-day. You're going to have some people that are kind of like, these are the people that I check in with periodically. You're going to have the people that I probably talk to very, very frequently. You have the people that you may not hear from for a very long time, but when you get on the phone or you get in person, you really chop it up. So I think, who do you turn to? Like, when you think about when things are going on in your day to day, who do you turn to?
So I'm gonna get a little sentimental right now, if you don't mind. So,
Oh boy,
that used to be my mom.
gotcha.
And when she passed, that was one of the hardest things I had to face.
Right.
Because she had a lot of wise things to say, and was very supportive and understanding. And I'm thankful, for that, because it enabled me to remain grounded.
Okay.
So now, who that would be would of course be people like you, Sandy. There's Beverly. Especially when I have to get things off my chest. And, we're attorneys, so I feel like there's certain things and certain perspectives we have as attorneys sometimes that we can appreciate as attorneys. And I don't understand why Marlon continues to talk in this room. But
tell Marlon, if he doesn't cut out all that cooking noise, we're going to put him on camera and we're going to make this a cooking show. Things that trigger us.
Yes, things that trigger us when you're recording and then your husband comes
pots
in.
And pans.
But yeah, like, I think there's an appreciation and an understanding because we're going through things at the same time, so
Right.
We can relate. So I really appreciate that, because it's not only a friendship on, what's going on in your life, what's going on in my life, but it's also, listen, this is how my day is going today. Can you believe X, Y, and Z? And it's like, I can relate to that. And
Yep.
We give each other feedback and pointers, and even constructive criticism,
Right.
To be there for each other. Of course, there are certain things I will share with Marlon, but I also know there are certain things I cannot share with him. Well, I can share them, but would it, go anywhere? Because it goes back to that fixed thing, right? Like, you have information that you're sharing, and it's like, okay, what do you want me to do with this? Like, I just want you to listen. I just want you to give me a hug. I don't know. Like, you don't have to do nothing. You don't have to fix anything. So, yeah. And then I can speak from the perspective of a mother. There are certain things that I enjoy doing and communicating and sharing with my daughters.
Right.
Having that mentorship, or even, it doesn't have to be my daughters. It could be other girls or boys that you mentor in the community.
Right.
It provides a sense of fulfillment, because if I can, my thought process is, if I can give back and pour into a child who's growing up and encourage them and support them, then that does me well. It does something to my heart. So those are some of the things that I think about. How about you?
So, we've talked about this. Can you vent to your significant other? And I've recognized that the venting is reserved for your girlfriends. Yes, but it's not for all your girlfriends. Now, there's some girlfriends you can't vent to them, because next thing you know, when you come back to them with something good, they're gonna be like, I thought you said no. So we're gonna vent to the person that we need to really vent to, and recognize that we have different people in position for different purposes, right? So I have, you see, this is what I'm talking about right here. Marlon, we asked you to be on the show, and now you are on the show. So that means you are not shy. So can we ask you a question on the show, please?
She wants to ask you a question.
You know what? This is the beauty. We had this whole conversation with Marlon. Marlon, how are you today?
Hey, how you doing?
So,
Are we live? Because I'm shy, so.
Marlon, we are liver than live. We're so live that
Oh.
somebody might wave at you, say something, or jump off. So, Marlon, let me ask you a question. We talked about men being emotional. Do you
Yes.
believe that men are emotional, just generally speaking?
I would say yes, but they just hide it. They don't
Okay.
really show it, like that, but they do.
And I'm going to ask you the second question that Kristen and I talk about all the time. Do you understand when Kristen just wants to vent versus complain? Like, is there a difference to you, or do you feel like we don't have time for this? Just keep it moving. Tell us the truth. We need a good answer. Oh, there's some people saying hi to you. Hey, Marlon from Tracy.
Hi.
And she said, good answer. Like, what do you think about it? We always feel like we have to get things off our chest, but we notice that generally speaking, men don't really like to hear like this. It feels like it's complaining, but when it's coming from us, we really just want to vent and get it off our chest. Why do you feel like that's a difficult thing to kind of hear?
I'm thinking it depends on the time. Because for men, sometimes when we come in, we kind of want to wind down. And if you just start to just talk to us about stuff like that, then, we probably might not really respond too properly to it because of that.
Tracy, we're going to pick you up. Go ahead, Marlon. You said because sometimes
when we come in, we like to kind of wind down, like chill down, we got a lot going on, like probably at work and other stuff going on, so we're just trying to get our minds in the right place. Okay. So it depends on the time that she probably would ask me, as far as when she would ask me, I don't know what's happening right now, but I think I'm kind of getting a bit nervous here. My words are going.
So Tracy said before you started answering your question, she said it's a trick question, Marlon, run. And then she said, it depends. Is Marlon a lawyer? Because if he's not a lawyer, I mean, we like to talk, us lawyers, like we're flapping our gums all the time, but I don't know. I've just noticed that, but you make a good point, Marlon, because if in your mind you're trying to decompress and somebody's coming at you with a lot of information and you just want to come in and you maybe don't even want to hear what's being said. You just want to be in relax mode. That kind of makes sense. I didn't really think about it from that perspective.
Yeah, it's that way for a lot of men, especially me, because sometimes I like running a business and stuff like that. It's a lot, and it's a lot to process. And you come home, you had a long day at work, and then you're gonna have paperwork and all that stuff, and you're just trying to just clear your mind. You just want to just chill for a bit,
right? Kristen,
you should ask him. So when is a good time to talk?
Yeah. No, I believe that's my time to go.
Here goes Tracy's response. It's a trick question, Marlon. Run.
I believe this time I'm gonna take her
Thank
word.
You, Marlon.
All right.
Oh, that was a cool impromptu. I didn't think about this.
Fine, guys.
We each have time and place for different purposes, right? I don't think about the fact that sometimes we want to get things off now. Mm-hmm. But with them, they may not even address something if it's happening right now. It may take some time to get to that venting, right? Because we're talking about venting. We're not talking about just complaining and, talking about the same thing over. We're talking about venting. Somebody wants to get something off their chest that either triggered them, affected them, hurt them. But if we're processing things in different ways, we talked about the Venus and Mars, right? If we're processing things in different ways, it would make sense that maybe when you're ready to talk about something is when he's trying to do something else. Mm-hmm. But then how do you figure out when's the appropriate time? Because it might just be a storyline with, I just don't want to hear that. And maybe that could be a little bit of some truth, right? I just don't really want to hear venting. I think that there's a better way to deal with issues. I don't know. We're predicting.
Or don't deal with issues. Brush it under the rug.
Because then
Because people have different ways of dealing with what they say, dealing with issues.
Because now we have to
or
look at culture and
mm-hmm.
family upbringing and how issues were dealt with. And then it's like, okay, well, if that's how issues were dealt with and that's all you knew, why would you be doing it any differently now?
Yeah.
We found a revelation and we've discovered Marlin at its core.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay, so I wanted to talk too about, so we talked about venting to your significant other or even venting to the, your chosen person, because we each have somebody that we specifically choose for different purposes. And I don't know how we make these decisions, because I've just noticed over the years, there's certain people I talk to about certain things. It's just always been that way. And there's a reason, because there's certain people that are structured to engage with you a certain way. There's things I may talk to you about because I know when I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to somebody that's just like, oh, here comes Sandy again with her foolishness. I don't have time to be listening to Sandy. You listen. You're asking questions. You might even, like, when I speak to you again, say, how did everything go with such and such? A follow-up, a check, hey, just checking on you, whatever. You've done that for me when I've dealt with certain things. And it's just like, okay, that's somebody that I can, speak to and share. But then you have some other folks in our lives, and we know who these folks are, that we have to be very careful, because our venting literally may be interpreted as complaining, and they see us as, oh, here come this one calling me again. I ain't answering that call. You know what I mean? So let me see what Miss Tracy says.
Tracy has a very interesting statement. I want to know more about that. What do you mean about that?
Tracy says, at our core, we are selfish, and what's in front of us is most important, whether we admit it or not. I feel like relationships, all types, are a vehicle to selflessness if we go along for the ride. And the key word is if, right? So even when you think about people who maybe don't have a lot of friends, or choose not to befriend a lot of people, or don't want to be in relationships for whatever reason, or don't want to be around people and they choose to be in certain realms or careers, there's a reason for that. Like you said, a lot of it is, we just want what we want. And oftentimes engaging with others, no matter the type of relationship, requires us to kind of compromise a little bit of what we want at a little level, right? Compromise a little bit about what we want to be selfless.
That's a good point, Tracy.
And not everybody's able to do this. This is why sometimes these triggers in these relationships can be like a big flare up versus, a little hiccup. That's why, because we are at our core. I mean, think about what we like to do versus what we're like, man, do I really have to do that? Because if something we enjoy, right, we're all willing, we're ready, everything, we're all in. But if it's something that it's like, you start to get up, you drag in, you're like, man, then you start complaining about whatever it is. Or if it's somebody that we know that is going to kind of take away from our hype energy, right? Like, we're in a good mood, but we know this is Debbie Downer. Here she comes. Here she comes. She's going to start talking about all this stuff. It's going to take me down a path I don't want to go. That's a lot. Hey, Beverly co-signs that, Tracy. That's a lot. I mean, it's definitely some things that we have to consider. So we hear the word selfish and immediately think it's negative, but everything about us defaults to self-preservation. I really like this. I really like this because I think that's what explains something that Kristen and I have talked about over and over and over, is this concept of venting versus complaining. For us, venting accomplishes something for self. I need to get it off my chest. Doesn't matter how you're receiving it, because you may not even want to hear what I'm talking about. But I need to get it off my chest, and I won't stop until I can get it off. And if I'm not going to get it off my chest with you, I'm going to go somewhere else where I can get it off my chest, say it to somebody else. But part of that is we are trying to maintain self, even at the cost of causing someone else to feel a certain way, right? Because we want to feel whole.
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
whatever we're doing. So I like that, Tracy. Let me see. Tracy
Mm-hmm.
on it. We're gonna have you on. We gotta talk for next month. We're gonna have Tracy up here, and we chop it up or something. We gotta add
Yes.
this to the mix. So she said that's not bad, it's life. Something we have to unlearn when dealing with others. And you know what? What you just said, this unlearning. When Kristen and I started this whole Civility Wins series, in a sense, because we're dealing with this podcast, I guess we could call this. We're dealing with the book. We're dealing with other things that we're working on. One of the core things that we were going through was not letting what we were told coming into the profession taint who we were. Because I know when I came in, I kept hearing nonsense like, this is the way it's always been. Or these are the things that you have to do in order to move forward in the profession. Oh, that's how some people are. And I'm like, no, I don't care how they are. I'm not about to be dealing with this and dealing with clients and dealing with judges and not today. So for me, I had to figure out that I was not going to allow myself to adapt to whatever it is that this system has created, because it's toxic.
What do we call ourselves?
Legal agitators.
Yes.
Because she and I would be like bucking the system, like complete. I remember one day, and I'm going to tell this story without telling what the scenario was, but Kristen and I were in an environment where all the forces in that environment were against both of us. And even the person that was supposed to be the neutral party, that was supposed to be looking out for the interests of the actual case, was against us. And we bucked them too. Because we were like, oh, you think because you're here that she and I are going to ignore the fact that you are violating what foundationally should be done here? Oh, no, ma'am. Sorry. Oh, no, person. We will not. And we were given, I must say this one thing, we were given something that we were told we had to do. And we decided not only were we not going to do it, but we were going to write about how we were not going to do it and submit that as well. So I don't know if you remember the situation, but I didn't want to tell we might need to write that whole story down. But that's not, I was committed coming in that I'm not going to, whatever that is, I'm not doing that.
Yes. Staying true to who you are.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Let me see what Tracy got. I love Tracy comments today, boy. We also have to remember that on the other side, because we know that we default to self-preservation, we should extend grace to people seeking self-preservation. It's a dynamic of understanding. And I love this concept of grace because I just think we don't give each other enough grace at all, at all fronts, whether it be in our work, in our personal lives, whether it be in dealing with our own self-care. We don't give enough grace and we don't give enough support. Tracy, you ain't done. We're going to say something else and you're going to be like, girl, I have to say something else. I have to add. We love your commentary, Tracy. And thank you guys for watching. And I know some folks are going to catch the replay. So I say to you, if you are catching the replay or if you're watching us now live, please don't hesitate to click the like and subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Even if you're watching us on Facebook or LinkedIn, please be sure to come back to our YouTube channel, click like and click subscribe. Just want to give a little plug and remember that all of this is not for just casual conversation. At its core, we are leading up to the launch of our book, Civility Wins, Find Your Peace While Taming the Beast. And today we're talking about things that trigger us and the relationships that sustain us. So we've come to the point now, and I know this is going to keep this part short because this is going to get a little extra. We wanted to really add on to this conversation because there is too much going on. Way too much. It's like every day. I don't even watch the news anymore. Like I haven't watched the news in ages, but there's so much going on that I always wonder, how far is this going? Now, we've come through a process of talking about being Black in America. We've come through the process of talking about the impact of police brutality. We've talked about the impact of violence very frequently over the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years. Like there's been a lot going on. Actually, the last 10 years, I would say we've come to the peak in our conversations about societal issues, in particular when it comes to race and violence. And even in this last week and looking at some of what happened, I'm just like, I'm at a loss for understanding how do we digest it? Because it just seems like we're being bombarded every day. And, we talk about civility wins. We talk about maintaining self while understanding that there are going to be a lot of adverse situations. But how do you do that to the core when so many things around us feel like they are crumbling? What do you think about that, Kristen?
It's scary. And I can speak personally. I have several family members who are police officers. And it's one of those things where I think kind of the point of civility wins and why we decided to do what we are doing. There are issues that remain that need to be addressed.
Right.
And in order to resolve the problem, we need to talk about it. Right. And so how do you do that? There are a lot of equity and inclusion and diversity committees that are forming, and task force.
Right.
And I would say that's a great start. And I think the point of it is to be more inclusive, to talk about these problems that we need to address.
Right.
Now we're at the point of how do we resolve it, right? And I'll put a little shameless plug here. I'm part of the Broward Black Chamber, and shout out to Shahiwa, the founder of the chamber, for her vision in starting it. And I know there are other chambers as well, but my experience through the chamber is that's one of the reasons behind it, to not only talk about the problems that impact us, but let's come to a resolution. Let's sit at the table and figure out how we can resolve these problems. I was going to say another thing as far as being a mother, right? And the incident that happened in Texas.
Oh, wow.
I cannot imagine. And my prayers and thoughts go out to the families of those victims. But that is a problem as well.
Right.
That needs to be addressed, and there needs to be a resolution for that.
Yeah.
But that's the key, in my opinion. Not brushing things under the rug.
Right.
When things happen, not, if it happens to the right, not going to the left. We're going to come over here to the right. We're going to say, hey, look at what happened. Right. We're going to talk about it. And then how can we fix this? Because it's a problem, and we're all human beings. We're all being affected and impacted, and it's time out for it. So how do we resolve it? And of course, I have to also put my shameless plug in because I am a firm believer in God, who, you might say a higher being, whatever the case may be. But prayer for me is a lot of it keeps me grounded. I'll put it like that, because there are plenty of times, we vent, I get it off my chest. But at the end of the day, my perspective is we all have one life to live, and we all bleed blood, red, comes out of our veins, and we are all human beings. And I want, at the end of the day, when I'm no longer here, for there to be a legacy that's left behind. And in order for me to do that, I need to remain grounded. And how I do that, one of the things is praying and keeping myself sane. Because like you said, I have not looked at the news. I cannot look at the news, and just surround myself by positivity,
Right.
because yeah, it's crazy out there. It really is.
I definitely say that I rely heavily on a lot of self-reflection and understanding my role in the world around me, taking advantage of opportunities as they come. I do things differently, and I don't allow myself to be wrapped in what people assume needs to be done. And I make that statement blanketly for no matter the circumstance. I do things differently, and I've never been one to kind of fall in line with what the expectations are, but instead, I've always tried to carve a lane for myself, no matter the obstacle. Um, and I think that's what makes us as individuals very unique, is being able to really lean in on who we choose to be. Because many times it's a choice, because a lot of times people are putting on the mask every day, and they're going through the motions, they're kind of trudging through their day, and they don't have an identity.
Mm-hmm.
When someone,
Mm-hmm.
if someone were to ask you about this person who comes in with that mask all the time, you really don't know who they are, because they're always wearing something, versus the person that says, I'm going to lean in on who I am. Like, since I've met you, I've only known you to be who you are.
Listen,
and I know when
like or
Shaniqua's
not.
coming, and I know when Kristen's there. And sometimes it's a Shaniqua, but sometimes Kristen, is both Shaniqua and Kristen at the same time. It's a little wobble, but I understand fully from all fronts, because you don't shift gears depending on where you are. If you're standing
Mm-hmm.
right here on this live stream versus if you're standing in a boardroom, you're still Kristen.
Mm-hmm.
That I've learned. And that's something that we all have to learn to have, because some of these issues that we're seeing going on around us, a lot of it has to do with lacking of recognition.
Mm.
We talk about mental illness, but mental illness is not the only issue that creates some of these problems. We discuss that, but it's not always the forefront of why people got to the place they got to. They got to the place they got to because of a bit of neglect, a bit of abandonment, a bit
Mm.
of people being dismissive of very blatant signs and behaviors. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I listen to the family members of the folks who commit some of the most, I just can't even, it's indescribable acts.
Mm-hmm.
And the response that they have many times is that there was a sign,
Mm.
there was a signal, there was a red flag, there was something. And the problem is either they ignored it family wise, or the system ignored it, in whatever system we're talking, whether it be the education system, the legal system, et cetera, social services system. So when you say we have to have conversations about it, it's not just conversations, it's also acknowledging things for what they are, and just not blanketing everything as if it's just mental illness. Mental illness is a component. Mental
Mm-hmm.
illness is a
Mm-hmm.
component. We all may have struggles with mental illness at different levels. But
Yeah.
beyond just saying mental illness, what is happening at the societal level in the home? What is happening in the school? What is happening in the legal system? What is happening in the social services realm? What is happening with us just engaging with one another day to day? Are we dismissing blatant things that we are seeing in our faces? And then it's when something happens, we're like, oh man, I should have. No.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we're reactive instead of being proactive.
And there's so many, I go through each story, and ultimately what's at the core of the story is there was a dismissiveness of this person's cry for help, this
Mm.
person's lack of stability mentally,
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
person's need for support and services. And then now you cause this person to fall into whatever place they fall into. And then we're dealing with other people being impacted by one person. So it's a rough thing. I'm hearing these stories come out. I don't even want to talk about the stories per se. It's just, I really want us to think about, our impact, and how there's some little things that we each can do in our circle of influence that may have an impact. Because even when we talk about being Black in America, one of the things that is just it burns me to my core. Whenever people are trying to talk about being Black in America and what that means, there's always a level of dismissiveness that I just can't stand. Because it's kind of like, well, why does it have to be a Black thing? Why do you have to pull the Black card? Oh, it's not always about race. Okay. It may not be for you. And I've said this for ages. It doesn't affect you because it doesn't impact you. Point blank. Because think about the things that bother us and trigger us. It's not going to trigger me if it has no impact whatsoever on me. And when I say impact, like if you think of what happened to the children this week, that has an impact on all of us. All of us have some children in our lives. All of us may have some level of a heart for the kids that are coming up. That's an impact on everybody. But there are people, even with that being something that could affect them, it doesn't, because they don't see it happening where they are. It's not until it happens where they are that's, oh, wait a minute, hold on, why y'all bringing this over here?
Yeah.
So I think we have to get a little bit of a check-in on that, because, you know, even when we're talking about the issues that we experience as Black people, as Black women, as Black attorneys, there are so many things that happen to us and we know what it is. As soon as things happen, we know exactly what it is. And people will do the little funny business acting like they don't know. Oh, it's not about that. Okay. It will be about that if you actually allow us to have the conversation and be open to recognizing that there are blatant disparities in our systems. The mere fact that you and I can go to court as we are, normal, look like everybody else, going in with same stuff, and someone looks to us as if like, well, what you doing here? This is for the attorneys kind of thing, right? Or the mere fact that we could have other attorneys, or even the folks that are supposed to be making the decisions about our cases, that'll be looking at us like, okay, who are you? It's a lot. It's a lot, but we have to be able to talk about it, and even taking it to the, you know, the conversations about the impact of police brutality. I feel the impact of police brutality has been that of an emotional one. You create a trigger in folks the moment that we see you. People don't want to call the police when they blatantly need it because they fear what the police will do when they get there. I don't know if I have more words on that. But violence today versus yesterday, because I'm thinking back to when I was growing up, and maybe I just don't remember. But
it wasn't publicized.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's because we don't see it. We didn't have social media at our fingertips. But why do I feel like I just see so much? Every time I turn around, there's something right close to home, or, you know, far away. There's always something. I don't know. So the only thing we can ask ourselves, civility, does it win? We have to choose.
Yeah.
And I would say with you and I, we've consistently made some choices because we figured, you know, I could respond in kind to something that I know is just not right. I could respond in kind to someone I know who is disrespecting me or being, like I said, dismissive of me. But does that help me further my purpose? Tracy said self-preservation, right? Does that preserve self? If I don't understand that civility is the only way, you know, I can go all other avenues, but what is going to allow me to maintain self? I'm done. I'm done. I don't know. This was a good one. You know, things that trigger us and the relationships that sustain us. There's a lot. but we have to definitely take heart to what matters most.
Mm-hmm.
That's my last words, Kristen. I'm gonna leave it to you.
Well, when you talk about trigger, I think self-reflection is a huge thing for me, which I appreciate more and more as I'm getting older. And no, Tracy, it's going to be a while before I'm old, but just understanding who I am as a person and the things that trigger me.
Okay.
Doing my best to not only understand that, but okay, this is how I can react if this happens.
Right.
Not perfect, because some things, will smack you in the face and you're like, oh, and I have to call Sandy up. Like, Sandy.
That's when that keyboard gets to typing real fast.
Exactly. But I think you said it best, we have to, I don't know, life is short. That's what I keep thinking about.
Right.
And maintaining the peace and doing the things that we need to do to remain true to who we are and not allow the outside forces to make or break us. And to remain civil. As it says, civility wins. So I want to put another plug in at this time.
All right, Glade plug
be
in.
On the lookout. Yes, be on the lookout. Be on the lookout. Civility Wins series. Please find us on Instagram as well as YouTube. We will be launching really, really soon. Come on, fingers crossed, next month, Sandy.
Yes, fingers
so
are crossed.
Be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for those pre-sales with our books. Thank you, Tracy. She has designed some shirts for us also. So I want to put a little plug in there for her. Beautiful shirts. So we will be doing something with that as well as other special items. So be on the lookout. Civility wins. That's all I have to say. Anything else, Sandy?
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. If you're catching the replay, thank you. If you are watching right now with us, shout out to Tracy and Beverly who kicked it with us a bit today.
Yes, thank you, ladies.
We appreciate you for joining us for this discussion, things that trigger us and the relationships that sustain us. Shout out to Fruitful Apparel Clothing. You can find her on Instagram. Miss Tracy really does a great work when it comes to getting our custom apparel ready. And just again, remember to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the like button. Please drop a comment after this video onto our YouTube channel. Check out our other two videos. We did something for Black History Month. We did something for Women's History Month. We talked about stress and hope. This month, we're talking about things that trigger us and the relationships that sustain us. Let's see what we talk about next month. Since we're going to be working on launch, we're going to come up with something creative to set off June. I mean, we have Juneteenth coming. So maybe we'll look at some ways that we can incorporate some conversation on that. So June and July will be some interesting conversations since we're in summer months. But we definitely appreciate you guys for tuning in and look forward to seeing you again real soon. Have a great holiday weekend. Be safe and take it easy out there, guys.
Thank you guys for joining. Take care.
Bye.